400 million years ago, almost everything in the ocean wore armor. Fish had skulls made of solid bone plate. Some of them were the length of a great white shark, completely encased in interlocking shields that could stop any jaw alive. For over 100 million years, armor was the single most successful survival strategy on Earth. And then, slowly, evolution abandoned it. Today, out of millions of animal species, you can count the heavily armored ones on two hands: armadillos, pangolins, a handful of turtles. So what happened? Why did the most proven defense in the history of life quietly disappear from almost everything? The Devonian Ocean was an arms race built out of bone. Starting around 419 million years ago, a group called the placoderms dominated marine ecosystems across the planet. These were not subtle animals. Their heads and the front half of their bodies were encased in thick plates of dermal bone, fused into rigid shields that covered them like a suit of welded plating. Some were small bottom dwellers, others grew enormous. The most famous, Dunkleosteus, reached roughly the length of a great white shark and carried jaws that could generate bite forces among the highest ever measured in any fish. Its mouth had no teeth in the conventional sense. Instead, the bony plates themselves formed shearing blades, self-sharpening edges that could slice through the armor of other placoderms. In an ocean full of armored fish, Dunkleosteus evolved a mouth built to crack the armor open. And it was not alone. The placoderms ruled for nearly 70 million years, radiating into hundreds of species. Filter feeders, some were ambush predators, some lived in freshwater rivers. But they all shared that fundamental design principle: bone on the outside. Armor first, everything else second. During the Devonian, that bet paid off enormously. If you wanted to survive, you wore a shell. Then the late Devonian extinction events hit, roughly 360 million years ago, and the placoderms vanished. Every single lineage gone. The ocean belonged to cartilaginous fish, the ancestors of modern sharks and rays, and to bony fish that carried their skeletons inside rather than as external plating. The armor era in the sea was over, and it never came back at the same scale. Sharks survived 400 million years without a single bone plate on the outside of their bodies. Speed, flexibility, and cartilage turned out to be a better long-term investment than heavy plating. But armor did not vanish from Earth, it just moved to land. By the Mesozoic, the age of dinosaurs, armored animals were thriving again in a completely different environment. The ankylosaurs carried it to an extreme that the placoderms would have recognized. These were herbivorous dinosaurs, low to the ground, wide-bodied, covered from head to tail in bony plates called osteoderms embedded in the skin. Some species had plates so thick and tightly packed that almost no predator could get through. The famous Ankylosaurus magniventris, from the late Cretaceous about 68 million years ago, weighed several tons and carried a massive club at the end of its tail, a solid lump of fused bone that could swing with enough force to shatter the leg of a tyrannosaur. Biomechanical estimates suggest that tail could deliver impacts equivalent to a sledgehammer at highway speed. That is a serious defensive toolkit, but notice what it cost. Ankylosaurs were slow, their limbs were short and stocky, built to carry weight, not to sprint. Their metabolic overhead was high. Growing and maintaining all that bone takes calcium, phosphorus, and energy that could have gone toward faster growth or more offspring. They were committed to one survival plan: take the hit, outlast the bite, and punish anything dumb enough to get close. For tens of millions of years during the Mesozoic, that plan worked. Then the Cenozoic brought the third great wave of armored animals, and some of them were staggering. The glyptodonts, relatives of modern armadillos, roamed South America for millions of years and reached the size of a small car. Their shells were not made of overlapping plates the way an armadillo curls up. They were rigid domes of fused bony scutes, a single vault of armor covering the entire back and flanks of an animal that could weigh over 1,000 kilograms. Their tails were armored too, and in some species the tail ended in a spiked club eerily similar to the ankylosaur model, separated by over 200 million years of evolution, but converging on the same brutal design. When two male glyptodonts fought over territory, paleontologists have found dents consistent with them, swinging those tail clubs at each other's shells hard enough to leave dents in the bone. Glyptodonts survived until roughly 11,000 years ago. They overlapped with early humans in South America. People almost certainly saw them, and archaeological sites suggest humans used their shells as shelters, so the armor worked against predators for millions of years. The glyptodonts did not go extinct because their armor failed in the way we might expect. They went extinct during a period of rapid climate change and human hunting pressure, both of which hit their slow reproductive rate harder than any predator ever did. So now you have the full timeline. Armored fish dominating the Devonian Ocean, armored dinosaurs walking through the Cretaceous, armored mammals the size of Volkswagens rumbling across. South America, armor kept showing up over and over in lineages separated by hundreds of millions of years because it works. Bone on the outside stops teeth. It is one of the most reliable defense strategies biology has ever produced. And yet today almost nothing uses it. If you're finding this interesting, there are more deep biology stories like this on the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The answer comes down to a set of trade-offs that slowly tilted against armor as the world changed. The first and most obvious cost is weight. Bone is heavy. An animal encased in dermal plating or osteoderm armor is carrying a significant fraction of its body mass as passive protection. That mass slows you down, limits your range, and demands more food to haul around. In a world where the biggest threat is a slow ambush-style predator, that trade-off is fine. You don't need to outrun anything, because nothing can get through your shell. But as predators got faster, smarter, and more cooperative, the math shifted. The rise of endothermy, warm-bloodedness, changed the equation even further. Warm-blooded animals burn calories constantly to maintain body temperature. Every gram of armor is a gram you're heating, moving and feeding that does not help you find food, attract mates, or raise offspring. Cold-blooded armored reptiles could afford heavy plating because their metabolic costs were lower. Once mammals and birds entered the picture, burning energy at 5 to 10 times the rate of a comparably sized reptile, the cost of wearing a suit of bone became a real liability. It is no coincidence that the most successful mammalian lineages, the ones that exploded in diversity after the dinosaur extinction, are almost universally unarmored. Rodents, bats, primates, carnivores, ungulates. They all invested in speed, brains, social behavior, and agility instead. The second pressure was the arms race itself. Jaws got stronger. Teeth got sharper. Crushing bites evolved independently in dozens of predator lineages. The fundamental problem with armor is that it is a passive defense. You build it once and hope it holds. But the predator attacking you is an active system that can evolve sharper tools in response. Over deep time, offense tends to outpace defense because it only takes a small improvement in bite force or claw shape to breach a shell, while the armored animal has to thicken the entire structure to compensate. The metabolic cost of upgrading armor scales faster than the metabolic cost of upgrading jaws. And then there is the simplest trade-off of all, running away. In most ecological contexts, not being caught in the first place is cheaper than surviving the bite. A gazelle that sprints away from a lion at 60 kilometers per hour spends energy for 30 seconds and then goes back to eating. An ankylosaur that absorbs a tyrannosaur bite survives, but it still took the hit, still risked injury, still burned calories growing all that plating, and it can never run from anything. For the vast majority of prey species alive today, the faster, lighter, flee-first strategy dominates because it costs less over a lifetime. The survivors tell the story. Armadillos are among the last armored mammals, and they are small, nocturnal, and live in environments with relatively low predator density. Their armor helps against opportunistic attacks, but would not stop a determined large predator the way a glyptodont's vault could. Pangolins carry keratinous scales and curl into a ball, which protects them from most natural predators, but has done nothing to save them from humans, making them the most trafficked mammals on Earth. Turtles and tortoises carry shells, but they are ectothermic, slow metabolizing animals that can afford the weight, because they are not burning calories the way a warm-blooded runner would. Crocodilians have osteoderms, but again, cold-blooded, aquatic, and not relying on speed for their survival strategy. Every surviving armored animal occupies a niche where the specific trade-offs of armor still make sense. Low metabolism, low predator pressure, and low need for speed. The moment any of those conditions changes, armor becomes a losing bet. So the picture is this. Armor was once the dominant strategy on Earth because the threats it faced were slow. The metabolisms that maintained it were cheap, and nothing had evolved jaws good enough to reliably break through. One by one, those conditions eroded. Predators got faster, metabolisms got hotter, and jaws got stronger. And the animals that thrived were the ones that dropped the plating, got lighter, and ran. Evolution did not abandon armor because it stopped working. Evolution abandoned armor because everything else got better at beating it, and the cost of keeping up became more than most lineages could afford. The next time you see an armadillo trundling across a road at night, slow, plated, curling into a ball when startled, you are looking at the last echo of a strategy that once covered the planet. 400 million years of armor, condensed down to a handful of holdouts, still carrying bone on the outside in a world that moved on without them. If that kind of deep-time biology is your thing, there are more stories like this on the channel.